guide down the exciting road of HDR processing and tone mapping. I've received a number of requests from the followers of my photo blog to try to explain the HDR process and how it works. And so I think the best way to do this will be to walk through the editing process of one of my recent photos. Now, the program that I'm going to be using is called Photomatix Pro, which is not free, unfortunately. But there are a few coupon codes you can get, as well as a free trial that you can use for as long as you want, but it will put a watermark on your photo that says Photomatix. Now, I've included both of those links in the tab below this video. Okay, so the image that I wanted to choose for today's tutorial, I really wanted it to showcase the capabilities of the HDR process. So as you can see, my background right now is this water tower with the underbelly being a parabolic echo chamber. Pretty cool stuff. This was the image that came off of my camera. This was, if I had just shot in auto mode, this is what would have come out of my camera. So as you can see, you really can't even tell what the heck this is right here. You can't really see this red fenced-in area very well. But here is the HDR final product, which looks significantly better. And this is what I'm going to be trying to show you how to get today. So let's close all of this down and go into Photomatix Pro. So I'm going to load these 3 images into Photomatix, and I mean, if you are on a Mac, on a PC or on a Mac and don't feel comfortable dragging those images there, you can just go to Load Bracketed Photos. Just hit OK for this dialog box, and so you have your first set of options here. The first thing is Align Source Images. Now, I did take this bracket, these 3 photos, on a tripod. However, it was really windy that day, so I'm going to keep Align Source Images checked. I found that by matching features works better than horizontal and vertical shifts only, because it accounts for rotation in your camera. And so if you took this handheld, or you're worried about the images not lining up correctly, check that checkbox. The second option you have here is to reduce ghosting artifacts. And so what this will do is, if you had anything moving, like a person walking across the picture, you can check this box, and what that'll do is take out, it'll only have the person in one of the shots, so it's not like a guy walking through 3 shots, which would look kind of weird, But I didn't have anything moving here, so I'm just going to leave that unchecked. Reduce noise. Usually you want to use this when you have a high ISO or you're taking really long exposures. I had neither. I was using an ISO of 100, and my shutter speed was like something like 1/10. I don't remember exactly. But I am going to leave Reduce Chromatic Aberrations checked. Generally, you want to always leave this checked, unless you have, like the nicest camera lens in the world. So I didn't really change anything there. Usually I just, go with this dialog and just do pre-process. So now Photomatix is going to take all of my 3 images, convert them into images that it can understand, because I'm using this Canon RAW format here. And then it's going to create the HDR image after aligning, all the source images. Something that's really important to note is that if you want really, nice HDR results, you probably want to shoot in the RAW mode of your camera. I'm using Canon camera, so that RAW mode is .cr2. Using RAW mode just captures more like light data. I know that sounds kind of weird, but it just has more data in the file, and that allows Photomatix to have more to work with. So, generally a bracket with 3 RAW photos as opposed to 3 JPEG photos looks better. So anyways, here is the tone mapping dialog box, which should have popped up after your computer did all that calculation. So what you'll notice on the right side here is the preset thumbnails. I generally try to stay away from the presets just because every time you are working with an HDR image, you're probably going to want to use different values for all these sliders. And limiting yourself to only one setup is, it's not that great of an idea. However, if you're new to HDR and you don't really know how all these sliders work yet, this is a great way to learn, what all of these sliders really do. So you can really mess around with that some other time. But for now, we're going to close that. So what we have here is our image that we're trying to tone map, and we'll start at the top here. The process I'm going to be using is tone mapping as opposed to exposure fusion. Exposure fusion just gives you an HDR image. Yeah, so anyways, using the tone mapping dialog. The method I will be using is details enhancer. Tone compressor is a viable option if you're wanting something that isn't as well defined, such as a silhouette of somebody in front of a sunset. Generally, I get better results using the details enhancer. So now we have to go through all these scary looking sliders here. The first one, as you notice, is strength. So the further to the right, the more intense the effect is, and the further to the left, the least, the effect is lessened. So we're dealing with the details enhancer. So the further to the right, you're going to have more detail. Now generally I take this value all the way to 100 and edit these other settings and then come back to it once I figure out what else I want for all these other values. Color saturation. So what this slider does is further to the right you're going to have deeper and more defined colors. Further to the left you're going to have a more closer to black and white image. So it's just how strong your colors are going to be. I usually leave this at 50 because I use a different program called Adobe Lightroom to do the color correction and tone correction in my images. So the next slider here is the luminosity slider. This is a pretty helpful slider for me right now because what luminosity does is it adjusts your midtones. So if you look at the histogram here, that just shifted all of my midtones to the right. And if I took this all the way to the left, it's going to shift my midtones to the left. So something important you want to remember is luminosity, microcontrast, and gamma all work together. So you want to try to change your luminosity, microcontrast, and gamma, find the best mix-up of all three of them. Usually I try to take my microcontrast pretty high, something like 9.1, 7.8, that's looking pretty good. And then gamma, I might take this down to like 1.08. Just to explain real quick, microcontrast, further to the left, less contrast at a small level, and further to the right, more contrast. So we'll leave that right around 9.2. So gamma and luminosity pretty much do the same thing, except gamma changes your midtones, in a different, like it uses a different method to change your midtones. Further to the left, is pushing these further back, so your image is going to be darker. So I'm going to leave that at like 1.5. Now I think maybe just to give this more of like a glowing effect, I'm going to increase my white point here a little bit. That's not generally a good thing when you see this this spiking on either one of the sides because it means you're losing detail. But I think in this photo I want it to, kind of have that glowing effect, especially since we have this area down here. And then take my gamma down a little bit further to account for it. Okay, so one thing that we skipped was the smoothing. You can either work with this in the slider mode. Further to the left means the least amount of smoothing is done. Light smoothing, that is. So as you can see, this looks kind of unnatural. This is really light here, and these columns are really dark, and that just isn't how the scene would be. Further to the right is the most smoothing, so you could argue that this looks the most photorealistic. But I think we're going to want something right in between. I like using the 5 settings here for smoothing when I'm dealing with detail. So I think I'm going to leave it right at mid, As you can see, that just looks really unrealistic and unnatural. Okay, so we've taken care of the first two sections. The color settings I generally don't use because, like I said, I use Lightroom to deal with this stuff, but temperature to the left, it'll make your image more of a blue tint, and to the right, it'll be more of an orange tint. So you can mess around with that. Saturation and shadow highlights. Highlights and shadow saturation. You have further to the left, your shadows will be, less saturated, and further to the right, your highlights will be more saturated. And same with the shadows. So, there's a lot you can do inside of Photomatix here. I'm just not going to be using Photomatix to do all these different effects. The final setting you want to look at here is called micro smoothing. Now, micro smoothing, instead of dealing with light, like this smoothing boxed up here, this has to do with the detail and sharpness of your image. So as far as micro smoothing goes, further to the right it's going to be smoother, and it's going to have less detail, and further to the left you're going to have more detail, but at the same time more detail results in this noise you see up here. Fine, I'll hit the 1/2. It'll probably just take forever to load, but okay, that wasn't too bad. So you want something that kind of still has detail but is smoother than this, something that something along these lines. Maybe take it back a little bit more, and that's looking pretty good. So I'm thinking this looks pretty good. Remember, you want to come back up here and see what you want to do with the strength. You can pull it back a little bit and see maybe in the sky back here if you think that this looks a little bit too unrealistic with the clouds here. Maybe take it back down to like 90. Yeah, I think I like that. Anyway, so once you have all your settings the way you want them, you will hit this button called Process, labeled Process. And that will then apply your tone mapping to your image, and will allow you to save your image as a TIFF or a JPEG or whatever you want to save it as. I'm not going to do that because it will take forever, and so I'm just going to go ahead and close out of Photomatix for now. As you can see, this image right here, the final tone map to TIFF, looks a great deal better than what we started with. Alright, as you can see here, we have our before and after images. It's always fun to compare, what your camera wanted you to end up with and what you actually do end up with. This looks way better. I'm very pleased with how this turned out. And yeah, so thanks for stopping by for this tutorial. If you'd like to learn more about photography tips, or just would like to look at my photo of the day, you can go to my website. It is www.travelingport.net, which I will include in the description down below this video. But you can go over to my tip section or my how I got the shot section and learn more about just general photography tips, and hopefully I'll be adding some more content about HDR in the near future. But yeah, as you can see, the tip section here, and as always, you can just check out my photo blog, the photo of the day. Just try to get out, one image every day on my photo blog. Anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you have, please rate and comment below. And hopefully I'll see you sometime in the near future. Take it easy.